Good afternoon, and thank you for joining me today. I am speaking to you from Treaty 6 territory, and I'd like to just begin by acknowledging the Métis people who share a very deep connection with this land. It's been 25 days since Danielle Smith announced her government's scheme to gamble away Alberta pensions by pulling out of the Canada Pension Plan. The UCP promised an engagement panel would, quote, consult with Albertans, end quote. But instead of actually talking with Albertans face to face, the UCP is only willing to consult via telephone. No in-person sessions. On one of the most important and dangerous questions of recent memory, Danielle Smith is not going to show up. Because, and let's be honest, she's afraid to tell Albertans the truth. It's why she lied to them during the election campaign when she claimed that an Alberta pension plan was not part of her agenda. It's why she won't look Albertans in the eye and take their questions. And it's what you expect from a government whose fake survey doesn't even ask the key question, do you want to leave the CPP? It's dishonest, it's cowardly. And it's what we expect from Danielle Smith. The Alberta NDP will not let Danielle Smith get away with trying to hide from Albertans. We will not let her ignore Albertans because this disastrous policy is going to end up costing Albertans more. It's a bad idea now and in the future. The UCP needs to keep their hands off CPP. And to make sure Danielle Smith gets that message, we are hosting a real forum through Your Pension is Yours survey on albertasfuture.ca, which, as of today, more than 26,000 Albertans have responded to, with over 90% of them saying no to leaving the CPP. So we will be hosting real online town halls with Albertans starting Thursday, October 19th. And today, I am also announcing that we will be hosting in-person town halls in communities around the province like Lethbridge, St. Albert, and more. So while Danielle Smith hides behind her multi-million-dollar advertising campaign based on false numbers, we will be meeting with and listening to the very Albertans who will be impacted by this devastating, self-serving policy. Meeting and listening in person. Stay tuned for the details as they are confirmed, because we care about Albertans, we care about listening to them, and we care about their pensions. Albertans deserve a better government than one that is too cowardly to make the case for their own terrible idea. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you. Just a reminder, if you're on Zoom, it's the raise hand function. If you're on the phone, it's *9. Please state your name and outlet. Catherine, your line is open.
I'm wondering, have you made a formal request engagement panel to have in-person sessions in the future?
Thank you so much for the question. So yes, we certainly have been calling for in-person sessions. And I understand that even on Danielle Smith's talk radio show this weekend, that Albertans were calling for in-person sessions. Albertans want to be heard on this. We see that from record engagement on our survey, which is now at 26,000 Albertans who have responded. And has the highest engagement of any survey that we've run through the official opposition albertasfuture.ca website. So the government cannot be unclear about what Albertans want on this, which is in-person engagement and for their voices to really be heard.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, and speaking of that radio show, what the Premier had said, at least what I heard, was that the engagement is starting with these telephone town halls, and that when I asked Treasury Board and Finance if there's going to be any in-person, they basically said that the telephone town halls are a start. So have you heard anything to the contrary, that they've completely ruled out any in-person meetings, or you just haven't heard of any in-person meetings happening?
At this point, we haven't heard of any in-person meetings happening, while at the same time, we are hearing from thousands of Albertans who want the opportunity to look Danielle Smith in the eye, to speak directly to the finance minister, and to ensure that the message that they do not want to leave the CPP is heard.
Thank you. We'll go to our next caller. Lucy, your line is open. Hey, Lucy, I think you're muted. If you could unmute and give it a go.
Hi, I'm Lucy Haynes with Alberta Prime Times. Do you hear me?
Hi, Lucy. Yes, we can.
Okay, hi. Similar to the previous question about how you're hearing Albertans say that they do want in-person town halls, are you getting calls or emails to MLA offices with that type of feedback?
Yes. So I've certainly heard that from some of my constituents in Millwoods. And I know just a week ago, our critic on this file, Shannon Phillips, talked about receiving more than 1,500 emails around pensions to her constituency office, far more than we would typically see on any controversial issue. I imagine that all 87 MLAs are receiving correspondence along these issues, and I can certainly say for myself and my constituents in Millwoods, they have very clearly said they don't feel like the survey that the government launched and is advertising it has any legitimacy because it doesn't ask the key question, do you want to leave the CPP? And they want the opportunity to make their case at an in-person session. There is a real concern that telephone town halls can be used to control the message, to control who's asking questions, to only let certain voices through. Whereas in an in-person room, there is far more of an opportunity for everyday Albertans to know that their opinions, their voices, their perspectives are being reflected in the conversation.
Do you have a follow-up, Lucy?
Yes, thanks. So for yours, you're starting with an online town hall later this week. In person, you named Lethbridge and St. Albert, and you expect to have more, and when would those likely be?
So we're going to be having more information about the in-person. We're just looking for venues and getting that set up. And so anyone interested in an in-person opportunity to speak about pensions should watch for more information on albertasfuture.ca. Follow the members of the official opposition caucus, in particular Shannon Phillips, our finance critic, especially watching for and advocating for pension issues.
Thank you, Lucy. We'll go to our next caller. Dean, your line should be open.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I had some tech issues, so I was jumping on late. Apologies if I asked something that's already been asked, we can talk about it offline. I just want to talk a little bit about what the Premier said on her radio show on the weekend. She said we don't need in-person meetings because 300,000 Albertans have already had their say, presumably at the Fair Deal panel. I don't know where that number's coming from. I've asked the Premier's office, what's going on here? Do you know where that number's coming from?
No, I don't know, but if the Premier is trying to lean on the Fair Deal panel report and the work done there, I would remind this government that the majority of people disagreed with leaving the CPP in the Fair Deal panel report. It was not identified as a priority that had more than 50% support.
Do you have a follow-up, Dean?
Thanks. Actually, I have a couple, Donna, so if you want to circle back to me. The other one is, it looks like the parameters of the debate are changing. When this panel, the Denny panel was struck, the Premier told CBC, we're going to let Albertans decide a wide range of things on the pension, including whether or not it should follow the Quebec model, which is maximizing payments while also investing in Alberta. Nate Horner said last week, nope, we're not doing a Quebec model. That's not happening. So it looks like that's now off the table. What's happening here, do you think?
So throughout this issue, the fundamental question that we keep coming back to is, do we trust the UCP to have this conversation, to engage in this debate? We see directions and messaging changing. We see a survey being released that doesn't ask the fundamental question, do you want to leave the CPP? We see a government that lied to Albertans during the election and said that this wasn't part of their agenda, and yet here we are months after the election, and it seems to be one of their most important priorities to do something that Alberta citizens do not support and are not interested in. So we have a real issue with trust when it comes to this government, as well as the data that they are currently presenting to Albertans that many people are calling fictional and made up. It's very frustrating as an official opposition that this government won't have a legitimate conversation with Albertans about their intentions, first during the election and even now, and that they're refusing to have this conversation in person where they can be held accountable and Albertans have the opportunity to look Danielle Smith and her finance minister in the eye and make clear that they do not want to leave CPP and they do not want this government playing political games with their retirement.
Hey, Dean, we have time for one more question, so why don't you go ahead and ask your question?
Thanks. You mentioned, Christina, the figures. The other interesting point on the Saturday radio show, one of the callers was concerned because we were basing the entire debate on the LifeWorks numbers. And so the Premier has said she has now asked Nate Horner to contact Krista Freeland to find out what their estimate is on what Alberta should have in terms of CPP assets. So, because she says we need that now as, at least as part of the debate and perhaps part of a lawsuit down the road or a legal fight. So what do you think? We're now reaching out for other numbers.
So I think what we're seeing is continued game playing by this government on something that is of critical importance to Albertans. Albertans want this government to be listening. We've seen through 26,000 responses to the survey that we've posted that 90% of our survey respondents do not want to leave the CPP. And on the flip side, the government, who has millions of dollars advertising this, hasn't even asked that question. Now, when it comes to the fundamental numbers, the key importance on the case that the UCP is making, they're playing games and saying that they're going to be writing letters to the federal government on this. I do not trust this government when it comes to the conversation on pensions. They've avoided having a proper debate on this many, many times in the past. Albertans do not trust Danielle Smith and the UCP on this file.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our press conference for today.